played a trio all night with Teddy on the piano, on playing a guitar, and a high school classmate of mine playing harmonica, and then Rosie Greer on this big African drum. And they literally sang probably till 4 in the morning. A couple of articles have come out recently calling me a populist candidate. And I was thinking, that's right, I am populist. I'm proud to be a populist because there's no way to take this country back except through people power. We have to unite working people in this country because the elites and corporations are not going to change on their own. They're not going to change without a powerful demand. And that's why I'm running for president. I want to reclaim our country from this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that is strip mining the middle class of its wealth, of its equity, and of our democracy. But we all need to recognize that if I do succeed, it won't be because of me. It will be because of you. It's going to be from people power, not Kennedy power. Thank you all for your commitment and your support and your friendship. Please donate to my campaign. This is our moment in history.
We support RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign simply because it's built off of truth and honesty. Mr. Kennedy's policies on economics, civil liberties, and revitalization will ensure America is on a proper path. Mr. Kennedy is not only my friend, he's America's friend. Let's heal the divide, get out, and vote. Kennedy 24!
If I have not significantly dropped the level of chronic disease in our children by the end of my first term, I do not want you to re-elect me.
Speak to the people of America about a subject which I believe to be most important, and that is the subject of physical fitness. And I speak not only as President of the United States, but also as a parent of 2 children who I hope will grow up with those qualities of vigor and energy which we identify with the best of America. This should be a matter of concern to us all. A country is as strong, really, as its citizens. And I think that mental and physical health, mental and physical vigor go hand in hand.
The pines, they often whisper. They whisper what no tongue can tell. Who drinks from the deep water? May he know the depths of the well. May I stand unshaken amidst the crash of the world. May I stand unshaken amidst the crash of the world. Oh, traveler, what have you seen? Were there crossroads? Where you been? Where you been? I once was standing tall. Now I feel my back unshaken amidst the crash of the world. May I stand unshaken
I know that that's not because it's personally troubling to you, but your concern is that it will be misinterpreted if you talk about where this may have come from. But I think actually it probably makes sense just to clear the air. So what is the wobble in your voice?
Well, I really don't know where it comes from. I know that I got it. I had a very, very strong voice until 1996. When I was 42 years old, my voice got this tremor in it. And the disease is called spasmodic dystonia. And I had no inkling. For many, many years, doctors have said to me, did you have some trauma at the time? That because apparently the onset of this disease, which affects, I don't know how many people, but there's a significant number, maybe 50 or 60,000 people who are affected in this country. But the onset of the disease is often accompanied by trauma. 2 years ago, I was reading, I was preparing a racketeering lawsuit against a bunch of vaccine companies, against 4 vaccine companies that make all 72 of the mandatory childhood vaccines that are given to children in this country. And for the first time, I had to go through the manufacturer's insert of every one of those vaccines. When I got to the flu vaccine, I realized for the first time there's 420 side effects listed as vaccine side effects on those inserts. And I had never read them all the way through. When I was doing the flu vaccine section, I saw that many of the flu vaccines listed spasmodic dystonia as one of the side effects, the known side effects. And they have to get FDA approval to put that side effect on their manufacturer's insert. And FDA under federal law has to agree that there's a probability based upon the evidence that that injury is caused by the vaccine. So this was only 2 years ago, and I've been working on vaccine issues since 2005, and people would ask me, do you have any vaccine injuries in your family or among people who are close to you? And I would say no. For the first time, I recognized that there's a possibility that my injury, the reason it's a possibility is because at that point in my life, I was teaching at Pace University Law School in White Plains, New York. And right next to my clinic where I taught, it was the school infirmary. And the infirmary every year would post a sign saying, come get your flu shot. And every year I went in and got my flu shot. Oh, in 1996, I got a flu shot. And I have no idea whether that flu shot caused this condition, but it is now at least a hypothesis.
I immigrated to this country, and one of the things that really embodies America to me is the ideal of freedom. Hunter S. Thompson said, freedom is something that dies unless it's used. What does freedom mean to you?
To me, freedom does not mean, chaos. And it does not mean anarchy. It has to be accompanied by restraint if it's going to live up to its promise in self-restraint. What it means is the capacity for human beings to exercise and to fulfill their creative energies unrestrained as much as possible by government.
So this point that Hunter S. Thompson made is dies unless it's used. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty had to be watered with the blood of each generation. And what he meant by that is that we can't live off the laurels of the American Revolution. We had a generation where between 25,000 and 70,000 Americans died. They gave their lives, they gave their livelihoods, they gave their status, they gave their property, they put it all on the line to give us our Bill of Rights. But those Bill of Rights, the moment that we signed them, there were forces within our society that began trying to chip away at them. And that happens in every generation, and it is the obligation of every generation to safeguard and protect those freedoms. If you like this video and you want to help me become President of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now. As soon as they started those clinical trials, they started seeing injuries and they started seeing waning efficacy, very fast waning efficacy And so they shut down the clinical trials after 2 months, and they vaccinated the placebo group. Now, that is scientific fraud on its face. The FDA should have marched them out of town if it was a functioning agency and laughed at them. But instead, it granted the license, and they ended the study with FDA approval. So now we will never know what the long-term impacts of that, because the placebo group is gone. They did that after 2 months. When they went to FDA to get their license, it's the only one that was approved at that time. They gave them 6 months of data. So even though they ended the study after 2 months, they told them what happened to the people who got vaccinated early and people who got vaccinated late. And here's the key metric: is all-cause mortality. It's the only thing people should have really been focused on. And there's a graph called S5 in those, which are now publicly available in Pfizer's submission to FDA. And if you look at that graph and at the language that follows, what you'll see is this. And this is very simple for people to understand. They gave 22,000 vaccines approximately to people in the vaccine group, and then there were 22,000 people in the placebo group who received a fake vaccine. After 6 months, there was 1 COVID death in the vaccine group and 2 COVID deaths in the placebo group. So that allowed Pfizer and FDA to tell the public that the vaccine is 100% effective, which they did. Dr. Fauci and everybody else said that from the beginning. Gates, the president, it's 100% effective because the number 2 is 100% greater than the number 1. So that was a deception in itself, because when most Americans, when they heard it's 100% effective, what they think is, if I get the vaccine, there's 100% that I will not get sick. I will not get really sick, and I will not die. But what it actually means is that in order to prevent 1 COVID death, they have to give 22,000 vaccinations. And what that means is, if you're going to give 22,000 vaccinations to prevent 1 COVID death, you better make sure that that vaccine is not killing anybody from other causes. And there's a graph that summarizes all-cause mortality. So how many people died in the vaccine group during that 6-month period, and how many people died in the placebo group? And in the vaccine group, 21 people died over 6 months of the 22,000 of all causes. And in the placebo group, only 17 died. That means if you want to do, if you want to follow their protocols and their estimates, if you take the vaccine, you're 21% more likely to die over 6 months than people who don't, of all causes. You're half as likely to die from COVID. You're 21% more likely to die from some other cause. And if you want to look closer and say, well, what was killing all these extra people? It was cardiac arrest. There were 5 cardiac arrest deaths in the vaccine group and only 1 in the placebo group. What that means is that if you take that vaccine, you're 500% more likely to die from a fatal cardiac arrest over the next 6 months than if you don't. What it also means is that for every life they save by preventing a death from COVID, they are killing 4 people from cardiac arrest. Hey guys, well, if you want to know what heaven and earth looks like, it's where I am right now. This here is an alligator gar. It's about almost 6 feet long. And this whole pond is filled with gar and pike. You can see them all there, giant gar and pike. And right next door, we have another one filled with bullhead and catfish. And there's another one for trout, another one for largemouth bass. This above me, you can see this pyramid. I am in Bass Pro Shops world headquarters here in Memphis. This is my idea of heaven. because I love gear. I really want to find where all the Rapalas are, because that's my favorite lure. Look at all these fishing rods. This is Lake Paradise. Here's the Rapala section. Anyway, and that makes me happy. This is my happy place. We've all heard stories of 20 and 30-year-old kids who can't afford to buy a house and even can't afford rent and are moving back in with their parents. This isn't happening because young people have suddenly gotten lazy. Monthly mortgage payments for home buyers are up 20% just in the last year, and that's because interest rates have doubled. Meanwhile, the cost of the average home has gone from $250,000 to $400,000 just since 2019. And those higher home prices have also driven up the cost of rent. So now Americans are paying a third of their income for rent. That's the highest ratio since records were kept. So what's happening? Well, what's happening is BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, these giant corporations which own 88% of the S&P 500, are going into real estate. These investment firms swoop in as soon as a house comes on the market. They outbid prospective home buyers with cash offers. They add that property to their investment portfolio, and then they rent it back to you or your children at the most exorbitant rate that the market can bear. So how can our kids or the typical American homeowner win a bidding war with BlackRock? By 2030, these giant corporations are on track to own 60% of the single-family homes in our country. So BlackRock wants to be everybody's landlord and everybody's neighbor, but I'm not going to let that happen. When I get to the White House, I'm going to restore affordable home ownership to every American, and I'm going to do that without raising the national debt. And here's how I'm going to accomplish that feat. I'm going to create a federal program that backs mortgages at 3% financed by tax-free bonds. These mortgages are going to be available to people only, not corporations. This will drop mortgage payments by more than $1,000 a month for a medium-priced home and allow your children to outcompete BlackRock in the market. So here's how it works. Imagine that you had a rich uncle who was willing to co-sign your mortgage. Well, I'm going to make Uncle Sam that rich uncle. It's not a giveaway, it's a loan guarantee that makes that property affordable to millions of Americans who cannot now afford it. This is just one of the policies that the Kennedy administration will deploy to create millions of new home buying opportunities at payments of less than $1,000 a month. We're also going to change the tax code to get corporations out of the single-family home market. And we're going to work with municipalities to get empty lots and derelict homes back into circulation at low prices. As President of the United States, I'm going to create a housing boom in this country the same way that we did it after World War II when we made home ownership affordable for working people. If you like this video and you want to help me become President of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now. More importantly, there's 3 giant corporations, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, which own collectively, they own each other, so it's really one giant corporation, but they also own 89% of the S&P 500. They own everything. They've now decided to buy every single family home in America. So if they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the homes in this country, single family homes, by 2030. They literally are trying to buy everything. And the head of it, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, is on the board of the World Economic Forum. And what they've said, we want this great reset, which is you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, they're on their way to making sure that we don't own anything. So you all probably have heard of people who are about to buy a home, and somebody comes in at the last minute with a cash offer and snatches it out of the market.
Right.
And it's usually an LLC with an ambiguous name. But if you trace that up, you'll find it's owned by BlackRock.
Wow.
How do you construe the relationship between this spiritual orientation that you developed, more classic religious beliefs, let's say? Your family is famously Catholic. I presume that also applies to you, at least by lineage, and also your political aspirations and career. So have you have you stepped outside of the 12-step ethos into a more classic domain of spirituality?
Well,
and how do you relate that to the political?
Yeah, I mean, I came from, a really firm sort of, base of Catholic schools, Catholic piety. I mean, my family went to church twice a day during the summertime. Every day we said the rosary every night on our knees. We said prayers at every meal before and after. So there was a consciousness of a kind of present and intervening God throughout our lives, my life. So I had kind of a basis in that kind of orthodoxy but when you're an addict, you're living against conscience, and when you do that, you're pushing God out of your life. So God became a distant concept to me during the years that I was an addict, and an active addict. And if you had asked me, I guess at that time, do I believe in God? I'd say yeah, but I had no sense of any kind of spiritual experience or authentic religious experience happening in my life. If you ask me where I am on, kind of organized religion today, I'm like a sponge. I take whatever I can out of any, I read a lot. I read about, other religions, and I'm like a sponge. I take the wisdom out of each, thing, out of each source, and try to integrate the things that I find useful into my own cosmology. But, I'm the least doctrinaire person, and I think orthodoxies are dangerous wherever they are. I think, whether they're religious or secular, orthodoxies are often hateful and, sometimes lethal. And that, and being doctrinaire is kind of the enemy of civility and community, ultimately. The problem is today that is frightening is that with AI, with artificial intelligence, and with all of these surveillance, like facial recognition systems, the satellite systems that are now, I think we're going to have 415,000 low-altitude satellites where they can look at every square inch of the Earth at 24 hours a day. We're all under surveillance. Your GPS, your cell phone is spying on you. We're carrying around these devices that are all spying on us, or all have the capacity to spy on us, and of course they are.
To what end?
The thing that's financing most of this are commercial and mercantile interests. I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience where you say, I need a better mattress. I can't sleep at night, and then 20 minutes later you get this, a bunch of mattress ads on your cell phone. Well, they're listening to you. If you are doing something that involves dissent or disobedience to government mandates, it's quite possible that there's some government agency that's keeping track of that.
Have you
That's scary.
experienced any retaliation in the since the pandemic? Have you seen any overt forms of retaliation against you by the intelligence community?
We come under attack by bots almost daily at the Children's Health Defense, but you don't know who's orchestrating it. It's all kind of obscure and invisible. Now, the CIA technically is not supposed to be spying on Americans in America, but the way that they get around that is they use the Five Eyes, which are the intelligence agencies from our 5 top allied countries, to do the spying, and then they share the information with the CIA.
Who are these people beholden to? What is their ultimate MO?
There may be no sinister motive at this moment in history. The problem is, and this is a solid rule, any power that the government has, it will ultimately abuse the maximum extent possible. And it will never give back voluntarily. So now the question is, they may not be doing anything bad with it now. At any moment, that could change. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now. That first letter from Khrushchev, he said, we're all on an ark. We can't build another one. The Earth is an ark. We need to preserve it. And the question now is, are we willing to do anything like that today? Or are we going to remain stuck in a self-righteous story in which America is categorically good and our opponents are irredeemably evil? If we remain stuck there, so will every other nation. It's not only America that's falling to this simplistic good guy, bad guy thinking. That's the example we've set for everybody in the world. This tribalistic, us versus them thinking is tearing us apart. But when we take the first step toward peace, we will become once again a true world leader, a moral authority. It doesn't take much, it's just the first step. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now. I consider myself a traditional Kennedy liberal. I don't know any of the values that my uncle, John Kennedy, harbored or my father shared that I don't share. They had antipathy and suspicion of war and the military-industrial complex. They did not want corporations running the American government. They were completely against censorship. They were against the use of fear as a governing. And you go down the list of the things that they believe in, and I don't think that there's really any daylight between me and what they believed. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now. Look at what this war is doing. We have pushed Russia into the embrace of China, which is the worst foreign policy outcome imaginable. It is not good for the national security of our country. And we're now have Putin's back to the wall. Well, Putin is the world's leading nuclear superpower. We aren't. He's got 1,000 more nukes than we do, and their nukes are much better than ours. They can shoot down our nukes. We can't shoot down theirs. You know, we are provoking a confrontation that could very easily lead to nuclear war.
Can I ask you to pause there for a second? Yeah. Everything you've said is checkable and rational, and you're extrapolating out toward the future, which is easy to envision. I don't understand how our policymakers aren't reaching the same conclusions you just reached. Like, they think that war with Russia is where we're going to win?
We cannot win this war.
Well, of course, so what are they doing? I don't understand.
Putin today, you know, we thought this was going to hurt him. He's more popular than he's ever been. We were going to break him with the sanctions. We did the opposite. We made him more powerful. He's now insulated from the trade and the international banking system. He's now got this great trade agreement with China. He's now engineering the creation of BRICS, which has 40 leading nations around the world turning against the U.S. currency as a reserve currency and adopting his petrocurrency or the Chinese currency. That is the worst threat to the United States. That will plunge. If we lose that status as the world's reserve currency, the Great Depression will look like a cakewalk.
So I agree with all of that, and all of it. I mean, your position to my ears sounds moderate and obvious. I just don't understand how the Secretary of State, how the president, how his competent advisors can't have reached the same conclusions. Like, what are they thinking?
President Biden has always been a very pro-war president. I mean, the only way I can explain it, and I'm not, I don't like to look into other people's heads, but Biden has always been a reliable, gung-ho, let's go to war guy. It's consistent with his historical instincts. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.
That you must take. You gotta have that mindset that quitting is not an option. Give up? Who, me? Never. Stop? Who, me? Never. That's for the next guy. That's for the next girl. But not me. Why? Because I don't quit. That ain't how I do it. That ain't how I roll. I never give up. You must understand that there will come a time in your life that circumstances are going to challenge you no matter what you do, but you must never give up.
Don't let the obstacles discourage you and make you believe that it's not meant to be. Pursue when it's hard. Pursue even when it would make more sense to give up.
Not you, champ. You ain't the one. Not you, kid. You ain't the one to quit. Giving up is not what you do.
Hello, my name is Mark Frisconi, and welcome to Sat Chat Live. This is a live stream where we wrap up the week in coverage on the candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This conversation is a product of daily discussions held in our volunteer Discord server over the past week. If you would like to be on our live panel, please join our Discord server today. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running to become the next president of the United States in 2024. He is the son of former U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy and is the nephew of former President John F. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy emphasized the priority of clean government, civil liberties, peace, and economic revitalization. Above all, he invokes the theme of unity. In his announcement for the bid of presidency, he said, during this campaign and during my administration, my objective will be to make as many Americans as possible forget that they are Republicans or Democrats and remember that they are Americans. Strongly committed to civil liberties, Kennedy emphasizes the importance of honest government and freedom of speech. So we are here today to exercise that freedom to discuss what is true about this remarkable man. Welcome viewers and guests to this next edition of Sat Chat Live. Hello, Carly. What's up next?
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see everybody. This is such an exciting week. We've got a lot of really good topics. I really loved watching through all the videos. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. I want to put a big shout out to Carly. She did that. I mean, that was a show in and of itself. That was just awesome. Thank you.
I'm keeping these posted on Rumble channel. We'll be posting the links to them on our feeds. So if you know of anybody who needs these 30-minute clips, before an event you're holding, or to show somebody what does Kennedy stand for, and it's varied, I'm going to be posting these so everybody can use them each week, because there's just so much material to pick from. And I think it really gets people thinking and realizing, more than just, this is not a single issue campaign by any means. And I saw something just recently where they were saying so many people vote based on a single issue. And the single issue here is, what type of life do we want to lead? And I think that's one of the big issues that we're going to be covering in our videos today. We're going to start with some things that Kennedy's saying that is going to affect us individually. What are the biggest issues we are facing? And then he's going to go to the opposite end. And he has a little Twitter comment, but mainly a look at what are these depleted nuclear weapons? And because there's so many terms we hear bandied about. And he had a link to this video, which is a couple minutes, but we'll give you a little bit more background. So when you want to voice your opinion on this sort of thing, you have some understanding, and it will help you to show what you're feeling. And then there's a number of different things, from the, shall we say, the Ministry of Dirty Tricks going on, that there are, the Democratic Party has instituted some new things because only because they fear him as a candidate, as a real threat to the current government. And what the media is doing. There's some historical clips explaining how things used to be versus now, called the Fairness Doctrine. And so we've got a lot of great topics, and we've got like some of my favorite people here on the panel, so we can really delve into things and have some good discussions.
Yeah.
So what's our first one, Mark?
Well, so before we get started, because we've got so many great topics, I want to take a few minutes and say hi to Sophia. Sophia Eric is a old friend of mine. We started out when I first heard Mr. Kennedy was running. I went looking for some place to go volunteer, and Sophia was starting up the Facebook groups that a lot of folks who are listening have joined. Sophia, how many people do you have in all of your groups, your artists and your public and private groups?
Hi, everybody. So we started really early on. I launched the groups when I heard for the first time that he was on, not really. I heard he was going to run for president. That was even before Boston. And then I immediately went onto the web and I'm like, it's barren. There's nothing there. We have to, because I knew when he announces in Boston, there's going to be a wave. Where are they going to go? So I'm like, okay, here we are, right? And so that's basically how it was born. And we're at the page now, which is, we haven't at all rolled it out yet. So it's for designers and creatives and writers and musicians who want to promote anything that they have to support the campaign. We want to have that page designated for them. We have probably ongoing, I think, 9,000 likes. Our private group, which is very restricted to us being very careful about the content. So it's just cool because anybody you invite, you're like, okay, you can be sure that we're really strict on what's in there. It's really for people to be able to understand who is he about. And it's really, everything is targeted towards who is Mr. Kennedy, what is he running for, and what is his campaign about. And it's just, no extra stuff going on there. So it's a very good place to invite people who might not even know he's running. So anybody listening, please join our groups and then just invite your friends. They get an invite and then they can decide quietly, would I like to investigate who Mr. Kennedy's about or not? So it's great. Anyway, so we have, I think, what is it? I don't have the numbers in my head.
I think it's over 30,000, Sophia. I think it's between the three groups. It's well over 30,000.
All in all, yeah. Okay. Yeah, with the page and the groups, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And you've organized, that's an amazing task. And you're like one of the top people for the Defenders of Democracy program of people who have signed up other people. You're like one of the top folks with that. I don't know how many folks.
I worked with the campaign very closely, and I was the one who actually coined the hashtag Kennedy Americans as a tagline for the campaign. I created the logo, the DoD logo with the campaign. So I love the campaign. I have only good things to say about the campaign and working with them. And so my project with the campaign was very, very exciting. I'm talking about just the part where I was directly working with them on some stuff. And other than that, all of my activity is really surrounding as you, Mark, Carly, and your team. That's why we've teamed up and we're supporting everybody who's wanting to see him become our leader in whatever capacity we have. And that could be in there's so many ways to support him, monetary and non-monetary, even if it's going into the group and commenting.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, your time matters too.
Yes.
Yeah. The campaign needs money. We need to hire his own protection. We need to get the state offices open. That's all critically important. But every time you have a conversation with somebody, every time you interact you wear a Kennedy t-shirt or a jacket or carry a tote bag, every time you get his name out there or mentioned, you're making a difference. So yeah, I love what you're doing, Sophia.
Well, I love what you're doing, Carly.
I love what you're both doing. So let's get on with the first story. So the first thing that we reviewed this week, and so the way this works is we have in our Discord group, we have daily discussions about content that's been released over the last 24 hours from Team Kennedy. And we go through it because, it's all good content. And it's hard. This week has been amazing. They've put out just a ton of great content. It's just been, we've got so much to cover. But the first thing was this genius idea of Kennedy wants to backstop mortgages, much like that the VA did for, that sparked the great building of the economic, the middle class after the end of World War II. Kennedy wants to do something similar. So let's take a look at this video.
Stories of 20 and 30-year-old kids who can't afford to buy a house and even can't afford rent and are moving back in with their parents. This isn't happening because young people have suddenly gotten lazy. Monthly mortgage payments for home buyers are up 20% just in the last year, and that's because interest rates have doubled. Meanwhile, the cost of the average home has gone from $250,000 to $400,000 just since 2019. And those higher home prices have also driven up the cost of rent. So now Americans are paying a third of their income for rent. That's the highest ratio since records were kept. So what's happening? Well, what's happening is BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, these giant corporations which own 88% of the S&P 500, are going into real estate. These investment firms swoop in as soon as a house comes on the market. They outbid prospective home buyers with cash offers. They add that property to their investment portfolio, and then they rent it back to you or your children at the most exorbitant rate that the market can bear. So how can our kids or the typical American homeowner win a bidding war with BlackRock? By 2030, these giant corporations are on track to own 60% of the single-family homes in our country. So BlackRock wants to be everybody's landlord and everybody's neighbor, but I'm not going to let that happen. When I get to the White House, I'm going to restore affordable home ownership to every American, and I'm going to do that without raising the national debt. And here's how I'm going to accomplish that feat. I'm going to create a federal program that backs mortgages at 3% financed by tax-free bonds. These mortgages are going to be available to people only, not corporations. This will drop mortgage payments by more than $1,000 a month for a medium-priced home and allow your children to outcompete BlackRock in the market. So here's how it works. Imagine that you had a rich uncle who was willing to co-sign your mortgage. Well, I'm going to make Uncle Sam that rich uncle. It's not a giveaway, it's a loan guarantee that makes that property affordable to millions of Americans who cannot now afford it. This is just one of the policies that the Kennedy administration will deploy to create millions of new home buying opportunities at payments of less than $1,000 a month. We're also going to change the tax code to get corporations out of the single-family home market. And we're going to work with municipalities to get empty lots and derelict homes back into circulation at low prices. As President of the United States, I'm going to create a housing boom in this country the same way that we did it after World War II when we made home ownership affordable for working people. If you like this video and you want to help me become President of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.
All right.
Quick note, Mark.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that we have a VIP guest today. She's a part of the campaign. And I was just going to mention she might come on spontaneously, even maybe a 1:20 I think she just announced, because she's working.
Sure.
But she said she'll take some time. I announced her in that post. So I just didn't want to interrupt this topic. But as soon as she pops in, we have the opportunity to maybe ask her some questions and see what she has to say.
Yep, we'll keep our eye open. As soon as Anita pops in, we'll jump over and see if we can catch up a little bit with her and what's going on with the campaign.
Yeah, we're like a live news show.
Yeah, live.
One of the things I was thinking in watching this video is not only are younger people not able to afford the rent on housing, and so they're living with their parents, on top of this, they're having to pay off student loans. It's not just the exorbitant prices. And so the combination is just binding people out of school, in a debt prison. And this reminds me of like back when we had the indentured servitude to get over to this country to begin with. And it's just horrendous. And I love this plan because he's spelling out, this is how we're going to pay for it. This is how we're going to do it. And this is our goals with it, which is more specific than I hear much anywhere from government.
Yeah, and as a millennial, I could even speak on this. We can't afford to buy a house, plain and simple. Like, we need to have at least 2 people working in the home, or 3. Really, it's more like 4. Inflation's so high nowadays. What did he say the average price of home went from, what is it, $250,000 a year to $400,000 a year in less than a year's time? Is that what he said? During the housing video, when he was talking about the housing prices?
The housing prices have practically doubled. And when you look back to like the 1960s, people were paying, I'm totally forgetting the numbers, but something under 1/6 of their salary went toward housing. And now people are paying over 50%, closer to 60%, just for the building we live in.
Yeah, and so none of my friends are buying homes. Like, they're all paying rent, and he often, like he just mentioned, BlackRock buying up the homes, 60% soon they're going to own by, what was it, like 2030. So yeah, we're losing our homes to giant corporations too. And I really hope he is elected president, because I love that 3% idea. That sounds really good to me.
Well, having benefited from a VA mortgage, I can say it's huge. It's huge. You don't have to qualify for a loan. You don't have to come in with a big down payment. I mean, it just makes all the difference, and it would get so many more people. I mean, there's so many vacancies, and it's all being bought up by this corporate pool of or this international pool of money fronted by BlackRock, Vanguard, and so on.
It's around here. I live in California, and they're putting houses on the market, and then they're selling for $50,000 over asking because of the bidding that's going on. And I've heard even a friend of mine living in Duluth, Minnesota, ran into the same thing. So it's not just California where this is happening. That just the prices, the housing prices, because these cash buyers see the long-term gain of renting these out, they're willing to put in that kind of money to get the property, which is a far cry from everybody deserves to have a house from the 1950s.
Yeah, not to mention they're swooping in and they're buying them with cash too on top of that, which is even, worse of a disadvantage to us.
I have a friend where we have a family friend. He comes up here quite often. His name is Scott, and he's what do you call it? Not digital, just a nomad. And I was looking at a video this morning in Arizona. Right now, there's designated 14,000 acres for people. You could just come. You pay basically $180, and then you can put your tent, your RV, whatever you want on the property. You can go find a spot for yourself. Costs, I think, $180 for half a year rent. And
Wow.
There's 250,000 people living there right now. There's women in tents there's so many reasons people are moving out. A lot of them have money. A lot of them don't have money. They're all helping each other. I have goosebumps when I mention this again, because it's real. Like this friend of ours who comes up, he tells us all the interesting, juicy stories about what's going on there. And it's a huge, huge movement. And more people there's so much happening, but that's just one spot in Arizona. And that's 250,000 people who are living there 24/7 because they can't afford to have a house anymore or an apartment. They can't afford rent. It's incredible.
And when you look at all this, and then you look at all the migrants coming in that are getting paid, I think it was $2,200 a month, which is
I can't process that. Yeah,
and it's more than they're giving people on Social Security who have paid into it their whole life. And that's off topic here, but we've got so many things that just have to be cleaned up, and they're just unfair to Americans. And I'm glad to see he's trying to change things.
All right. So I think next up, so we've got kind of the main topic that I think the campaign was interested in this week. And so we've tried to arrange this in kind of a sequential order of how things came out. But there's definitely a theme about, the campaign's position. They're getting a little tougher with the DNC here, and you'll kind of see it as it progresses. The first video is a piece from the Tucker Carlson interview entitled "The Return of the Democrat." Let's give this a look.
The Democratic Party has had this very interesting shift. When my uncle was president, my father was in, the Democratic Party was where the people who were poor and working people were. And today, 70% of the wealth in this country is owned by the Democratic Party and only 30% the Republican Party. The top richest counties in this country, 9 of the 10 are Democratic counties. So there is this kind of shift in wealth that maybe is one of the reasons that Democrats do not seem to be talking to or for working people anymore. My father used to bring us to Southeast Washington to meet people who were poor. Or he'd take us to the Mississippi Delta or West Virginia, to Appalachia or the Indian reservations. And he always said to us, these are your people. He said, the people who are wealthy, who are the big corporate leaders and titans, they don't need the Kennedys. They have lawyers and they have PR firms and they have lobbyists. And he said, when you grow older, I want you to do something about those people. And that's one of the reasons that I'm running.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.
I love that story every time I hear that story about his father coming back from the Delta and telling him that, one day I want you to do something to help those people. And like every day, you just see it. He continues to work. I really enjoy that.
this is not something he just started because he thought it would look good because he's running for president. I mean, that's the one thing in everything I've seen. It goes back in every video of any age that we've seen, and he's been on video much of his life. And that this is just who I am, and I'm continuing what I'm doing, but more visibly now. And I think that's part of the appeal. And it's a reminder that it's all of us. We've all got to be doing it, because most of the people that he appeals to also have been living this way, to try to bring their best self to everything they do as often as they can, no matter what life throws at them.
All right, yeah. So we're trying to get Anita in here. We're having a little difficulty getting her connected. So I was just working with that link I gave you. Sophia, should work. Just have her. She might need to download an app on their iPhone. I'm not sure. I don't know how that
not
works.
really. I just clicked on it and it pops up. So I just sent her the screenshot.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we can get her on. That'll be, we're looking forward to have a conversation with her. So, like I said, this was this first video was kind of like a opening salvo at the Democratic Party, like what it means to be a Democrat. What it does. Who did, and I remember this too. So that's why I love where I got connected to this campaign is, because I remember Mr. Kennedy's father and I remember his uncle when they were alive, and I remember the kind of magic America was feeling, when they were talking about the things that they were talking about. And so, this is a real big connection for me. All right. So let's take a look at the next item. Let me share the next item a little bit behind here. Oh, I gotta go to the next one there. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so this one is the next video in the it came up the next day. It's Mr. Kennedy had retweeted an interview with his name is Frank Luntz, I think. Yep, and he's like a top level Republican strategist. This guy, they call him the Nostradamus of Republican strategy, because he just like has this spooky, he gets it right type of reputation. And so he has a little advice for Mr. Biden. Let's see what he has to say.
Joe Biden is in no position and in no condition to take on Bobby Kennedy. He's at the prime of, I don't agree with him, but he's at the prime of his career. I've debated him before at the New School in New York, and you know what? I'll be honest. He crushed me on environmental issues. He's quite good.
Given a 17% polling rate from Robert F. Kennedy, given 69% of Democrats consider the president perhaps too old, given a lot of other factors, should the Democratic National Committee endorse at least one primary debate, or no way?
No way. This one's an easy question. I believe Bobby Kennedy is going to get somewhere between 30 and 40% of the Democratic vote in New Hampshire. And that'll be an embarrassment for President Biden. But better for Kennedy to do that well than for Joe Biden to risk having a bad debate performance. And quite frankly, as we get into the end of 2023 and Republicans begin to have their debates and their caucuses and primaries, I still wonder why the Democrats don't turn to the president and say to him, sir, the economy is getting a little bit better. Inflation seems to be coming down. This is a great time to pass the torch to the next generation. We're not electing Joe Biden at the age of 80, 81, 82. We're electing him for 4 years. At 86, do you really believe 5.5 years from now that he'll be effective?
Wow. It's something, Kennedy is not going out to say these things, but it needs to be said. And I appreciate the fact that he's not saying it and the reasons, because, that's not healing the divide to speak ill of who you're running against. But, this is a very concrete thing. I like the fact that the guy himself, who looked like he likes to win a good debate, said he trounced me on environment. I couldn't, beat him. And we've all seen him in action with every news person who tries to pin him to the wall, and he just laughs it off and said, no way. And so, the idea of having we've seen clips of Biden not really sure, even with his little note cards, what he should be doing on the stage, let alone in life. And Kennedy is always in charge. Could you imagine somebody handing Mr. Kennedy, now this is what you're supposed to say, now look at this person, now look at this person, now sit in this chair? He'd have that thing ripped up so fast. Or to say, my handlers won't approve if I do that, which Biden has said many times. And we want a president who's in charge, who knows what's going on, and can take that same ability to stand up to all the people around him as to go out. I see Anita made it. Why don't
Yes, let's take a
we
little
take
break
advantage
from.
of her being here? Welcome, Anita.
Yeah, let me give her a little introduction. So, Sophia and Anita were actually working together when I first went looking for some place to volunteer and to get involved with Mr. Kennedy, and so that's where I met. Did we just? Oh, there we go. I changed positions, and so that's where I met Anita as well. And so I learned a few interesting things about Anita. I'll just pass on a couple of them. That she served in military intelligence at one point, was one of those satellite people would go over those satellite imagery and see what our enemies were up to. And she also knows Mr. Kucinich quite well. Actually worked with him on his presidential campaign previously, and is now working down in the state of Florida, organizing down there for the campaign. So Anita, welcome. Take it away. Say hi, and we're live right now across the Facebook groups, and we'll probably get hundreds of views. So welcome to Sat Chat Live.
Thank you. I've tried to get on here before, but I'm usually working my little part-time job on Saturdays. So I haven't had an opportunity, but I'll try and get on every week. I guess you're meeting every week now. And I would say just get ready, because I think the campaign is really building momentum at this point. Really excited. I know everybody that's working on meet and greets and events are pretty much in South Carolina this weekend. And I just talked to the National Field Coordinator last night, and she was saying it's just lovely here. It's like one of the most beautiful places, South Carolina. I said, yeah, it's kind of like the South's best kept secret, really. So they've been spending a lot of time there. I have no idea what state they're going to next.
Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I think mainly we don't know because inside the campaign, things are shifting and changing all the time. Also, for security reasons, they really just kind of want to keep any kind of schedule under wraps for now. So anybody's guess is as good as mine. So I tried to narrow Rhonda down to like, hey, when you get into Florida, but she wasn't taking the bait. So we'll just have to wait until that time comes. In the meantime, I guess everybody should be creating their lists of people and what they want to do for the campaign. So I have a long list and then I have a short list. So the short list are people that are really excited, enthused, and ready to go. And that's the key to creating a list of people. But the other thing is just taking those great videos and just copy, paste, share, copy, paste, share. Make it a regular thing where every day you're sending out, even if it's just one video, send it to 20 people so the media is not doing us any favors. So we kind of got to be the media. So that's pretty much it. If anybody
people to join the groups, right? Because that's really, really important, because then you don't have to single-handedly send people things, which, social media doesn't really enjoy. But they have created this awesome thing called groups, and that's a great way actually to help people stay informed. Same way we promoted this Sat Chat to the groups, and that's why we've been growing. I mean, that's right. Anita, you're an admin.
I think being on the groups helps you be able to network with people that are in your immediate area. Like Florida is a really huge state, for instance. It would take, just for example, 12 hours to go from Pensacola to Key West if you're driving. So all these different metro areas, they're going to have to hook up with people in their particular metro area to organize in that specific area. So, smaller states, I don't know, but in Florida, we have 14 million registered voters. So,
Yeah, so Anita, a couple of things I wanted to mention. One, we want to get a stream going into your Facebook. We could connect up, so I want to make sure we get connected up with that. And the other thing is, it's just great to hear from you from the campaign and have you here. That's kind of what we're doing with this video, is that we're reviewing all the Kennedy content from the week and kind of showing, talking a little bit about it. If you can stay and help us review a few things, we'd be glad to have you on. Johnny, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had one question for Anita. So since you guys aren't putting the schedules out that far in advance, security reasons, I understand. But a lot of people are really interested in seeing when you guys open up campaign offices, like today, how you're opening one in South Carolina. I think tomorrow you're opening one in Columbia or Charleston or somewhere. So yeah, people love to see those events and the little town halls, but we've been having a real big issue with getting a link to be able to watch them live. And at a couple points, Matt went live on the Kennedy 24 YouTube channel and showed us a South Carolina event once. And, now we're kind of itching to always see a lot of the events, and they're never live streamed. And I feel like a lot of people are missing out on some really good content that, they otherwise.
I think it's really important for you to state that, because we've stated that to a couple of key people in the campaign. So if you want to use the form on the website, you can put it there, or you can send it to press@teamkennedy.com and just let them know that, what success is when there's videos of the crowds responding to Mr. Kennedy. And, every time they have an opening, there's a huge amount of people. You want to show those people, and you want to show him speaking and the people reacting to that. So I think that's really important. And we had a couple of ideas that we kicked around to some of the key people that would be working in the media and social networking. One of the problems too about YouTube is if you even say the V word, for instance, what I mean, the V word, YouTube will take that video down. So I think whatever Matt LaFlamme had done regarding that video in South Carolina, he had interviewed a few people, and then he showed Mr. Kennedy speaking. And as soon as that video was finished, it was a live stream and it went up on YouTube. It went boop. It just disappeared because the word was used. So I think if you're going to be on YouTube, you have to be conscious of how you can say things. We suggested Rumble, and really, if I was, if I was doing it myself, I would upload to Rumble. Because Rumble right now is not being censored. So,
yeah, I mean, we watched it live, the South Carolina one. We watched as a group on Discord, and we had quite a large group of people watching it and then commenting over in the chat. And it was really a fun experience to do, so we can get more mileage to more people who are outside the state.
Right.
We're also set up where we can just do a screen capture with OBS if it's going to be live streamed, so that we have a copy of it that we can put up to Rumble or distribute and, just get the good parts version or whatever we want to do. So, again, this is another group thing. And I like that you gave us a way to suggest this to the campaign, because it has the "you are there" feeling and really emphasizes the grassroots and gives people something to share, even if YouTube is not going to let it be there.
Right.
They're not our only hope. We have other means.
Anytime there's a video like that, it has to be duplicated, uploaded right away, because we just don't know about the censorship. And even X right now, formerly known as Twitter, has started to censor. But Rumble seems to be the only platform that's not doing that. right at the moment. So
And, BitChute, there's a few others, but that's something that there's people in our Discord. I'm one of the people who can just capture stuff very easily, and there's many of us, and I'm sure Sophia has a team of them over on Facebook. And if we have multiple people doing it, that's all the more copies out there.
Right.
Hey, Drew had a hand up here for a bit. Drew,
Yeah,
do you have a question?
For a minute, I appreciate all of us being here together. One of my main pulls to the campaign has been Charles Eisenstein, and Charles Eisenstein sent out a mass emailer through the campaign this week. And I'm involved in an online community connected with him. And this summer, there was a gathering, and there was somebody from the campaign who suggested that the campaign would be encouraging monthly meetings on the 24th. And I think in July, there was a big campaign, and there was a Zoom call with Kennedy himself and about 200 participants. And I think at some point there was an idea to have these monthly in-person meetings. And I think that's a great idea. I wonder if anyone else has heard anything about that, or right now we're talking about doing online organizing and having videos, but I think in-person organizing is also very important. Just curious if others have thought.
I know that they did that in the very beginning, and I had organized one here in the local area in Tampa, and there was some kind of like snafu in regards to like updating your listing on the website and everything. And the campaign decided not to follow through with those, and basically to consider those as grassroots. So there hasn't been any other call to create these events officially. I know they have unofficially through the grassroots, but not through the campaign itself. And I would say if you can do it through grassroots and organize anything in your local area, whether it's a 24 event or meetups or sign waving on a corner, like next week we're going down in Tampa to Dale Mabry and Kennedy Boulevard, and on Friday night we're going to be sign waving. So you can create any of these events. You might not necessarily have Mr. Kennedy there with you, but that's not going to stop you from creating the event itself and networking with other supporters.
This is another thing you might be able to use these 30-minute videos that I'm putting together, because I've got those without our Sat Chat stuff around them that I've posted on Rumble, and I've got the links on Discord. Anybody wanting to host an event, but you want to have something to show, you can, however many, whether you want to show it for an hour or a half an hour or 15 minutes, there's a bunch of clips that people can watch, or that you can just have, at parties, just had a projector on the wall with videos going, and everybody just does party stuff.
I'll just say that's a brilliant idea. A lot of my friends know about my enthusiasm for the campaign, but sometimes they say, I don't know where to get started. So this is a great resource to say, oh, here's a summary, a weekly summary. So thank you.
What I think is really cool is this right here. This is a great opportunity to invite people to see who is involved, everybody can participate and chat and ask questions. And I think this is kind of like what we thought it would be with the 24th. Obviously, Bobby's not here right now, but he kind of is. We're showing what he put forth this week. And who knows, if we get big enough, maybe we could actually have him come on as a guest speaker.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, folks, I gotta go.
Okay, Anita, thank you.
Thank you for stopping by, Anita. It was great to see you.
Have a great day.
Anybody can reach out to me if you want to text me, call me. My number's all over the place. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
So I just really want to share the importance of this call right here, right now, and how this is grassroots. This is it. And so I almost sometimes feel like from an outside perspective, often, we're the ones actually making this campaign happen. We're the ones giving money. We're the ones supporting. We're the ones telling, really,
our country.
Bobby, we want you as a president. Without all of us, he wouldn't be doing this anyway. It's us. So if we're we want him here, we want that, we need to express it. But it's not just about us sitting back and saying, I remember this was a really important conversation in the campaign, which is something that they really want us seeing, is going into action and us leading. Like, what do we want to see and what can we do to set that in motion, which is what we're doing right now. I think it's so, so valuable, and it's giving others the permission to do the same thing, and also to, invite them to join in on the fun and have these conversations and express what you think. And just an example, he mentioned in one of the videos, I think that curation is amazing, Carly, of the videos. One thing he mentions is the 5 eyes. So if you Google that, there's it's on Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. It's called 5 Eyes, but it's actually the 5 Eyes Club. And it's something that I think I Googled like 10 years ago. And I'm like, he's actually talking about these things. You can Google them, they're real. And it's like a conglomerate of countries. There's like a first level of the countries that have teamed up. And then there's a second level, which a lot of people don't know about. And those are countries that have also joined unofficially. For example, Germany. They're all exchanging data and working together. This is no joke.
Yeah. Well, that's how they bypass the laws. So they, because we can't spy on our own citizens, but we can hire somebody else to spy on our citizens.
Officially spying.
Yeah, and then we can buy the data from them. And there's a lot of like private concerns right here in America that are doing the same thing. Our government's making use of just, because they're not technically violating the law, but in spirit, one would suggest that they are. All right. Well, this is a great conversation, but let's move on because we've got so many good conversations yet to go with what we've already got lined up. And so the next thing I wanted to share, and we're kind of getting back into the Kennedy's campaign, taking a few shots at the DNC for some of the things that are going on. And so here we are on the next step. And I got to get to share. I wasn't ready for this. There we go. And so the next step here we got is just a response from the DNC. And I'll just read this real quickly. It was Kennedy responds to DNC undemocratic attempt to rig the primary process. Responded today to the news that the New Hampshire Democrats will defy the National Party to keep their primary first in the nation. I thoroughly support New Hampshire's century-old status as the first primary state and the political culture that has grown up around it, said Kennedy. The new first state in the official calendar is now South Carolina, a state in which President Biden has performed well in contrast to his losing record in New Hampshire and Iowa. Referring to that fact, Kennedy added, everyone knows the real reason the DNC made the change. The people of South Carolina didn't ask for it. No, it's simply another undemocratic attempt to rig the primary process in favor of their anointed candidate, Joe Biden. The DNC seems to have forgotten the purpose of the modern primary system to begin with, which was to replace backroom crony politics with a transparent democratic process. Kennedy plans to continue campaigning in New Hampshire in defiance of the DNC's scheme, but he is also showing surprising strength in South Carolina. If the Biden campaign thinks that they can win with administrative tricks and evasions, they will be in for a rude surprise in both New Hampshire and South Carolina, Kennedy said. So I kind of thought, all right, there's a little bit more oomph to that, the next shot, because they're trying to change the rules right up front to make it so that there's just too many delegates that they can't get.
May I say something on the whole DNC thing?
Sure.
The Biden. So the fact that the DNC wants Biden to be reelected and has made that decision is because it doesn't matter. They have, what did Bobby say? They have $2 billion in their war chest, like their dollar war chest. They've already made the decision. They don't care. All they want is for their narrative to be pushed through. So if they have a puppet in front that doesn't know what he's speaking about, he doesn't know what he's saying, it's perfect. Why would they want anything else? And why on earth would they want somebody who's calling them out? That's the last thing they want. And it's like, isn't it clear as day? Like for me, it's like, isn't it clear as day what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Well,
completely it's completely blatant to me that they are not only going up against their own value system, but very communistic of them what they're doing. Like it kind of reminds me of what Putin does in Russia, with their candidates, how they just kind of select them, and what's going on, even with the whole Biden Trump thing, that's bad. But what the DNC's doing is just worse to me, in my opinion. And I was like looking at their website the other day and they're talking about how they sell, everything they sell, the money goes to help a Democratic candidate. And that's even a lie in itself, because they're using that money to smear Robert Kennedy. And the party is going to fall apart, because they're going to end up making it fall apart. And it's all going to be the blood's going to be on their hands, not Kennedy's.
Well, so this is, I'm watching this kind of transpire, and we'll get to our next piece here shortly. And actually, I'll just share that. But here we go.
Sorry, all this topic gets me heated.
Yeah, so the next thing that came out was a letter from Mr. Dennis Kucinich, and actually I was hoping Anita could kind of comment on this too, so this was another it was yesterday. All right, so this letter came out yesterday. I'll read the highlighted parts. The presidential campaign has contacted the DNC in advance of its September 14 meeting. The campaign is asking the DNC to clarify its position on ensuring that every voter registered has their vote counted in the 2024 primary. The campaign also requests a clear statement on whether the candidate chosen by a majority of the voters will be the party's nominee for the president of the United States. Kucinich noted that Article 5, Section 4 of the DNC charter states, if the conduct and management of the affairs and procedures of the Democratic National Committee, particularly as they apply to the preparation and conduct of the presidential nomination process, the chairperson shall exercise impartiality and even-handedness as between the presidential candidates and campaigns. And so he goes on to kind of call out the DNC on their dirty tactics, and wants to actually have a meeting with them as soon as possible, so that they can discuss this. And so this is kind of like a little bit more of an elevation, like they're seeing it, and we want to talk about it, and we're not going to just sit by and let it happen, I think is what I'm kind of seeing it progress. And I've got a few more things here to show, but what do you guys think about this at this point?
Well, I think this is like the warning shot of, we're not going to roll over and play dead for you. And we see what it is, and we're going to make it be known that this is who you are. Because every act that they do is showing who they are and what they really stand for. And the second part of that link there, he's talking about, he actually sends a letter that looks like the warning letter that you're going to be getting. If you go to a lawyer, I think that they're messing with me. Well, let's write a letter, and that way we have in writing what's happening and how they respond to it or don't. And this is, they're really calling them out on it. And okay, this next part is just appalling. Beyond the direct discounting of votes from some states, Kennedy plans to question the DNC's creation of a new class of superdelegates, empowered to overturn the vote of the people and the nomination to the favored candidate of the party elites. So, the party elites are the only ones who matter, according to this. In accordance with this principle, the presidential primary process was reformed in 2016 to remove superdelegates from that first round of voting, to try and get more in touch with the people's votes. Unfortunately, it appears the DNC has created a class of superdelegates called party leaders and elected officials, giving them their own acronym, who are essentially the same as superdelegates, due to the amount of control the party exercises over elected officials, Kucinich said. This puts the DNC once again in the position of overturning the will of the voters across the United States. It is unclear how overturning the nation's majority vote could be interpreted as trusting the people.
Pretty heavy stuff. So one of the thoughts that I had on this, and I apologize, Johnny, jumping on you. One of the thoughts that I had on this initially was when we're talking about, we deal with a lot of, folks who are coming in who maybe it might have been a Trump supporter or an independent or that type of thing. And one of the comments that I get from a lot of these folks a lot of times is that, you call yourselves defenders of democracy, or using the word democracy a lot of times. Did you know that it's not even in the Constitution? And that's a point that folks on the right like to, because when we talk about, my mind, when Kennedy's talking about defending democracy, this is the democracy we're defending. It's a selection process that we use to elevate our candidates. And right now, we don't have a democratic process, and we're in it, and it has been co-opted. And in my mind, I think that's what Kennedy's talking about. So that's my answer to my conservative friends, and why we use the word democracy so often, is that there is a democracy that underlies our system that we use for a lot of things, and one of them is to select our candidates. And so that's what we're trying to defend, I think, in one regard anyway.
I wanted to add one comment. I think it's helpful for us to analyze these issues, but to also come back to being strategic. I mean, I think we can all agree that like Sanders' campaign years ago was mistreated, and we kind of expect the Kennedy campaign to be mistreated by the power structures of the DNC. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? Because if we wait too long, in my opinion, I think Kennedy getting the Democratic nomination is the best path to the White House. And just laying out the battlefield, so to speak. The DNC, the powers that be at the DNC, are either going to push Biden, or maybe they're going to shift to a different candidate, but they're not going to support Kennedy. So we have to somehow overcome the powers that be, and that's just sort of the status quo of the situation. And just calling it out as being crooked or whatever doesn't actually put us in the position to win. So I just want to voice that.
The way I see it playing out, though, is right now with what they're doing rule-wise, like Bobby said, we literally have to win about 80% of the delegates in order to get the nomination. Biden could only get 20 and still win. At that point, it's no longer fair at all. Like, he's not even asking for it to be completely fair. He just wants to have a chance. But at this point, they're not giving him one. And so on the 14th, they're having a meeting with the DNC, hopefully. And they're going to be talking about these things and see if they can come to some kind of compromise. And if not, if we can't come to a compromise, I mean, we're all very logical people here, right? We understand that getting to 80% of a vote is pretty high and pretty insurmountable. And we're probably going to end up talking about third-party runs, which is probably going to lead us into another video, Mark, that I believe.
Yeah, so we're kind of teasing where we're going with this. So next up, we got another video. Let me share the screen a little faster at this now. All right, so let's take a look at this next video. This is another release.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here. After 4 months of crisscrossing the country and speaking to thousands of Americans from all walks of life, I've come to understand that what our campaign really is the spearhead of a massive populist awakening. You see, our nation's most serious problems come from a single source: the entrenched corporate political elite. Government agencies, Congress, the defense industry, Wall Street, the media, big tech, big pharma, big ag, and pretty much big everything have a death grip on our democracy. And there's only one thing that can break that grip. And no, it's not me. It's you, the people. It's a populist movement that unites left and right, black and white, rural and urban, young and old. We can't just wait around for the Washington establishment to change their minds. We can't expect Wall Street to stop strip mining the middle class of its equity and its wealth. We can't expect the military-industrial complex to promote peace, or the censorship big tech complex to promote freedom or freedom of speech. We need to do it ourselves. We have to take back power in this country for the people. Let me add one more item to the list of entrenched institutions, the Democratic National Committee. In an honest primary, the candidate with the most votes would be the nominee, right? But the DNC has imposed delicate rules that make it nearly impossible for an insurgent candidate to win. It has totally rigged the system.
Very early on, back in February, we passed a resolution unanimously within the DNC that we are all riding with Biden and Kamala Harris.
But you know what? Neither the DNC nor anyone else is going to stop us. President Biden's billion-dollar war chest is not a match for people power ultimately. That's why we're opening field offices in all 50 states. My campaign will be funded by millions of small donations from people who want to heal this nation. Now's a great time to make a donation to my campaign. Even $5 or $10 contributes to our momentum. Thank you, everyone, and God bless you. If you like this video and you want to help me become president of the United States, go to Kennedy24.com and donate now.
Okay, so Salvo, left or right, we're going to build a populist coalition. It's kind of where, there was some talk about what it means to be a populist, I think, earlier in the week or last week. And now he's using the terminology in his videos. And he's talking about we're building a coalition of left and right. And we're building it. I mean, I've been seeing it since I joined with you, Sophia. We're, watching those Facebook people join. When you had the questionnaire, like, what, and just asked them a few questions about whether or not they, wanted to be part of the group and where they came from, and it was people like, I've been a Republican my whole life. I never voted for a Democrat, and I'm going to vote for this guy, stuff like that. It's a coalition.
He is not, he is coming from a position of what we view ourselves as Americans, ruled by the people, the government works for us, rather than their agents and of the lobbyists and the big corporations. And this is almost as important as like the American Revolution. It's the same principles of, will we be legislated for the good of the monarch or the oligarchy or whatever you want to call the class of people who are wanting to impose their idea of what is good for them and have everybody play their little parts like interchangeable little dolls in their drama? Or are we people who are living together and working together and building something, which is what we were all taught, who we are as Americans? And I think this is so important. And he's awakened that and reminded people of that in everything he does. And I think that's where a lot of the passion comes for what he's doing and what we need to keep doing every day.
All right, so I'm going to just kind of toss this next video out right away on top of the other one. So Mr. Kennedy had an interview with Forbes that was just it was spectacular. If you get a chance to watch it, it's about a half an hour long interview with this woman. She did a great job. She was, fair and kind of tough, but I think it was a good interview. It was kind of the kind of interview that a candidate of Mr. Kennedy's stature should be getting. And so then they actually made some real nice clips. So if you go to Forbes, you can kind of see some great clips of different positions. The one that we're going to show here, it kind of feeds into or kind of goes along with what we're talking about. And let's give this a look here.
And do you feel this orchestrated campaign to basically marginalize you?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And it's not only by the DNC, but also the press. My numbers are putting me at the third spot after President Trump and President Biden. And my favorability numbers are better than any candidate. But I'm not allowed on CNN. I'm not allowed on MSNBC. They will interview Nikki Haley, who has, a tiny fraction of the vote count that I have, or Vivek, or Governor DeSantis, or any of these other candidates who have only a fraction of the support that I have. And yet when the press talks about me, it's, they always use the word long shot candidate before they talk about me. They don't do that with other people who are running today. They give them kind of a fair shake. But
I want to get a sense of if the decision holds for the current, sort of primary structure with the DNC. What is the route to victory for you against President Biden?
Oh, if the DNC is going to make it, is going to rig it so that it is simply impossible for anybody to challenge President Biden, then, I need to look at other alternatives, because I can't go back to the people support me and to my donors and say, I'm in this to make a point. I need to show them a road to victory.
What kind of alternatives would you be exploring, Mr. Kennedy?
Well, I don't know exactly, because I want to see what the DNC does. I want to see if they make it, if they if they make it a fair contest. And I'm not asking that it be 100% fair, but I'm asking that there at least be, a chance that it be plausible for somebody else to win other than their, chosen anointed candidate.
In a scenario of President Trump, Cornel West is in the picture, President Biden, let's assume, who would you support in that scenario, or who would you want to be aligned with?
Well, I don't have like a plan B. I intend to be a candidate myself, so I'm gonna support myself.
All right, so I think he kind of comes out of the box there and says, "I'm willing." And so this is something that people have been saying all along. I come from a Bernie background. A lot of people who I know who supported Bernie, they're going, "I don't want to get my heart broke again. Are you sure that this guy could do it?" And I had a sense that from the very start, this guy was gonna, he had a plan, and his plan was, I'm going to just run for president of the United States. That's my plan A. And I'm going to run as a Democrat in the Democratic Party until I can't. And then we're going to look at other ones. And so that's kind of where our conversation got kind of lengthy and interesting. What other options Mr. Kennedy might have. I know one of the things that we looked at, the Libertarian Party was delaying their endorsement process till after the Democrats were done. So any comments on that?
Yeah, well, one of the most important messages here, in my perspective, is he's in it to win it, whatever that means. And that's the most important thing for all the supporters to understand, is that we need to entrust in him, that he will do whatever it takes, and that he's walking his talk, which he's been doing basically for the past 40 years. And he's shown us that he walks his talk. So now he said there's no plan B. This is it. I'm running. I'm in it for myself. I'm in it to support the people. And is what that means, I don't know. But one huge advantage of what he's doing now is, for everybody who still needs to see it in plain sight and see what is happening, or what has happened with the Democratic Party, which has nothing to do with democracy anymore. And I think this is what we're seeing unfolding, is what has actually happened to our country. This is not a coincidence that we're in this mess. And so the fact that he is running in the Democratic Party is actually genius. It's like, you can't put a Band-Aid on an infected wound and then and look the other way and expect nothing to happen. That can go really bad. So he's like, let's take the Band-Aid off and let's look at this damn thing. And without that, we cannot heal the divide. So I think that's the most important thing. And one other comment, Carly, what you said before, it nearly made me tear up, because that's also heal the divide, is he's waking us up again to our true nature. Why are we Americans? What is it in our hearts that makes us feel the way we feel and makes us unique in the world, with the Constitution, with everything that belongs to us? And it's that everything that is not reflective of Heal the Divide is showing up. And it's even showing up in our supporters, I'm seeing, people who don't understand that concept yet. And we're all showing up to heal that part of us, within us, that is not part of Heal the Divide, where we have trauma, where we have, and he's also walked that path. He's healed himself from that. I mean, are you kidding me? There's nothing to there's everything to look at him for what he's done, and that he's walking his talk, and where we can look at that and take from it whatever we need for our system to understand, where do we actually need to heal that the divide that we have somewhere in our systems. So I think that's where we're really called upon to look at ourselves and to say, before we start pointing fingers at anybody, any party, any person, any system, it's like, where are we not functional yet? But that's going way far.
I love what you're saying here, and tying it also to Mark's comment of people saying, well, I don't want to back somebody and then have my heart broken again. The only thing that's going to break my heart is if we cannot stop BlackRock and all the things that are going on in this country. And he is a leader, he embodies everything, and he lives it. And so he's a perfect person at the front to lead the battle, but it is our battle. And it's about getting a president in there. None of us care what party he is. We want to get a candidate in there who represents the America that we believe in, the America that was promised to us as kids, because all those contracts have been broken of what to expect in life, what we were trained for, how to act, to have a successful, happy life. And instead, everybody is working really hard and struggling, and they're not happy, and they're being told it's because you are, and then back to this tribal, you're not empathetic enough to some very small fraction of the population, or there's so many divides. And the only way we move forward is together with synthesis of what's the best in all of us. And I see Johnny had a finger up.
Yeah, I also just wanted to make a comment directed straight towards the DNC. This is just for me personally. Like, look, guys, like, I don't know if you guys want to win elections or not, but you have an option here on the 14th when you meet with Kennedy to change what's going on here. And if you don't, what's going to happen is a fifth to a fourth of the party is going to leave in droves. And you're going to lose all your independent voters, and you're not going to win general elections anymore. And I'm just letting you know that for me personally. So look forward to that in the future. I would really pay attention in that meeting on the 14th, guys. And I just also wanted to pin off of when Kennedy was talking about how they do like these sideways comments towards him, whether they'll call him like a long shot candidate or like a crackpot candidate, or any kind of name they can discredit him with. The more they do that, the more they're helping him. And I don't know. The Democratic Party to me has become so corrupt that I never thought in my lifetime that I would not only leave the party, but watch it basically burn itself to the ground, which is what's happening. And this really should alarm a lot of people. Like, if you believe in the First Amendment in this country, this should alarm you. If you're a Republican, this should alarm you. This can happen to your party as well. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Losing our vote for who is running for office is also restricting our freedom of speech and our freedom to participate in what's going on.
Amen to that. All right. Any other comments on this? This was like the big item for the middle of the week. It was great. It's kind of fun to watch it as it progressed all week long. Because, Kennedy, Mr. Kennedy has, said he's always been consistent. I have no plan B. I'm running as a Democrat, and he should. He is a Democrat. He is the essential Democrat. But
I just wanted.
Go ahead.
I wanted to add to Johnny's point. A lot of the states require you to be registered Democrat to participate in the primaries. For me, if RFK went independent, I would take that as an opportunity to just drop the party totally. Personally, as a former Bernie supporter, I really wanted to get out of that party anyway. So,
well, and
I'll
they have
second that.
Yeah, and they have to look at that, like, because they have to start doing the calculations, like what's going to happen. When we reviewed a thing where we're starting to see evidence of them trying to pull the kind of similar Trump. They're like, well, what would happen if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. became president? And then they paint this like nightmarish scenario that it would involve Russian assets and everything else, so that they could start delegitimizing him immediately. Because if he did run as an independent, they'd have no compunction or compulsion to work with him, being a different party. So, I don't know.
When you look at what went down in Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all that with Bernie,
right?
And it was very clear some really evil wrongdoing was going on, and it came out in public. But no one stopped it. No one reacted to it. And this is where I think having a lawyer like Mr. Kennedy will make a huge difference. He's used to their stuff. That's who he fights daily in his career as a lawyer. And so and Kucinich has been, in the government for a long time, very shrewd, and has always had, this found grounding in these same types of issues. And I think that it's not going to go the way they think it will, because he's not a target. He's nobody's punching bag. And I think it's going to go very differently particularly if we support him and what he stands for, no matter what. And let him lead, let him do it, because he has this thing of give me a sword. We want to give him that sword so that he can win it.
Yeah, we're here. We're that army. Real quickly, so we've got a few things we want to get to yet. We're running a little bit long. Actually, there was a little news flash that just came out about, and we'll jump into that real quick between topics. But the huge victory for free speech. This is a tweet from Mr. Kennedy. An appellate court just ruled that Biden admin violated First Amendment by coercing platforms to censor. And by the way, Trump admin did it too. And so there's an article out in the New York Times that sides with Mr. Kennedy. So there'll be more to come with that. So that's a big one. That's a real important kind of up to date. You see, you watch live, you get live news.
We'll really pick this one up next week because there's a lot to say on it.
Yeah, we have to review that yet.
Yeah, I just want to say, as a YouTube content creator, this makes me happy. I love it.
All right, let me get the next screen up here. Okay, so we're going to change topics now. And so the next thing that came out was a tweet this week from Mr. Kennedy, where he talked about Republican Senator Romney and Senator Blumenthal. Both are trumpeting the American is getting its money's worth in Ukraine. Our latest investment, depleted uranium munitions. We're sending weapons with depleted uranium munitions. And Andrew, I know you're on here. Do you have any background on what a depleted uranium munition actually is?
Yeah, I got a little bit on it, not a whole lot, but it's basically the depleted uranium that's used for nuclear fuel. Eventually it starts out as basically fully charged, and as it gets used to generate steam inside of the nuclear reactors, it will eventually decay, radioactively decay enough that it stops generating the heat necessary to produce the steam, and so they have to put it somewhere. And one of the solutions they had once storage started becoming a problem was to use it in manufacturing of ammunition. And in this case, it can be used for a large variety of shell types, all the way down to something you would put inside of a pistol. Not that I would personally ever want to handle anything like that, because they are still mildly radioactive. But they were it was considered a good way to get rid of expended uranium. But I don't know, I don't like the idea of scattering mildly radioactive material across the planet, so I don't really see it as that good of a solution.
Yeah, so from what I read about it too, is why it is effective as ammunition is that it's 1.7 times denser than lead, which allows it to pierce armor. And what they do is they create a bomb inside of this casing, and then it pierces the armor and then it explodes inside a tank, and primarily used for anti-tank weaponry. And when you dig into the article, do we have more on this here, Carly?
Yeah, if you click, this is a video that explains it.
Oh, okay. So no, okay. Wait
at the bottom, go back one.
Oh, here. Right. Okay, yeah, let's watch this video.
The UK is giving Ukraine 14 Challenger 2 tanks, including armour-piercing ammunition containing depleted uranium. DU, as it's known, is a byproduct of nuclear enrichment, the process that's used to make nuclear fuel and nuclear weapons. The uranium remaining after enrichment is depleted and around 40% less radioactive than naturally occurring uranium. It's used to make tank shells because it's so hard. At the same speed, depleted uranium rounds are up to 20% more effective than older tungsten ones. Conventional tungsten ammunition deforms when it hits metal, making it progressively blunter. Depleted uranium rounds, on the other hand, sharpen as they travel through, giving them greater punch. As it bores through, the DU penetrator also pushes in the tank's own armour. The crew inside then face not just a high-velocity projectile, but also fragments of their own vehicle, all ricocheting around their confined space at deadly speed. To make things worse, depleted uranium ignites when it's exposed to oxygen, creating fire and potentially cooking off ammunition and fuel inside the tank. For the crew, the effects can be catastrophic. Depleted uranium rounds were first used during the Gulf War by both British and American forces, As well as ammunition, the US also had 600 tanks fitted with DU armour, none of which were penetrated by Iraqi fire. America also operated the A-10 Thunderbolt, a tank-killing jet designed around the huge Avenger Gatling gun. It can fire depleted uranium ammunition at a rate of nearly 4,000 rounds a minute. The British Challenger 2 tank can carry nearly 50 shells, and the Gulf War was the only time British forces have used depleted uranium ammunition. In the years that followed, there's been a lot of controversy, with claims their use causes long-term health damage and contaminates the environment. Both the UK MOD and the US Department of Defence dispute that, though, claiming independent scientific research has shown there to be no link between depleted uranium and human cancer. Simon Newton, Forces News. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget...
Yeah, just the idea that you're spraying this stuff. You know, I've seen things that, like, anytime you're targeting anything, you have to shoot at least 2 weapons, you know, whatever, even if it's missiles, because one of them's going to miss, which means that we have 40% strength uranium scattered in the Ukraine. This is where people grow crops for all of Europe. You know, this goes into the food supply. And these people, you know, this idea that it's, oh, well, we did some studies and said there's no problems. We've certainly seen enough evidence over the past decade of faulty science studies that support the goals of whoever put it out there. And, you know, there have been people from a lot of the medical journals talking about this that had been heads of them. So I think, you know, this is nothing to look on lightly. And the fact that the UK and the US are the only countries using this. I mean, I don't know where the rules and the Geneva Conventions are on this stuff, but it just strikes me as wrong. You know, everything about war is gross and nasty, but I think this is over the top.
Am I the only one that didn't know anything about this? This is horrific. I had no idea.
That's why I wanted this in there, because I just had no idea anything about it.
Well, and we had chosen not to show the pictures of the deformed children, the generations of deformed children that are occurring in Iraq now from the depleted uranium munitions. There are children, generations after generations of innocent babies born with horrible birth defects because they were living in proximity to this.
I didn't know that was the cause, though. But that makes total sense. But I didn't know that 2 missiles were always like, or as you just said, Carly, that is just like. But
that was from the Tucker Carlson interview.
I remember in Augsburg when because I moved here from Germany last year, and Augsburg is the oldest city in Germany. I remember one incident where on Christmas, the whole city, the core of the city was evacuated on Christmas Day because they found a bomb that had somehow gone missing, and it had crashed into a building, and I guess they just let it stick there and they just built on top of it, and then they were taking the building down, and then somebody found it, and coincidentally on Christmas Day, they had been working on this building, they found a still active missile in the building in the middle of the city, and they evacuated the whole city for Christmas. And so I was reading up on this, and it's like, yeah, like so many, I don't know, they like, I think over, I don't know how many, I'm not going to guess the number, but thousands of missiles were still undetected in Germany. They didn't know where they were. And I'm like, what? That means like I could be anywhere and they could be walking over a missile or run into a missile, my child could. And this is what's happening. This is incredible. And this is not even uranium.
Well, so this is Ukraine, this crossroads of Europe, the breadbasket of the region, one of the most pristine, beautiful places in the world, and we're just spreading cluster munitions and spent radioactive material all over the place. And the Defense Department, they say once it blows up, it's the radiation is negligible, and that's not true. I mean, that never happens. It doesn't explode perfectly every single time.
I want studies done by somebody else on this stuff. Yeah. And let me just do one thing quickly. You remember back in the 80s when Princess Diana made a big stink about how many mines were left all over the world after World War II. And that they just, well, that's too much trouble to dig them up. And they've just left them, and the amount of maiming that went on with kids running through the field, not believing when their parents said, don't go there and stuff. And
Yeah,
this
kids.
is not a new thing. And there have been attempts to make the stupidity of war a little less dreadful on non-military personnel, but this whole attitude toward it is just appalling. And I'm impressed that Kennedy actually provided a link to this video that I just showed with his tweet there. So who else was ready to talk?
Oh, I was gonna say that there's a couple of podcasts that I've watched. I can't remember which ones because they're getting buried in so many that I've seen. But there was someone that was talking about leaked Department of Defense documents that showed that not only was the Department of Defense aware that depleted uranium was radioactive enough to find its way into local populace, but that this was an intended effect. That this was the equivalent of salting the garden. If you go into a war with a region, with the government in a region, one way to destabilize their economy for generations to come is to basically irradiate the entire fields that you fight in. And so it's one of those things where on the surface you see the language of, oh well, no, everything's fine, it's all good. But on the backdrop of it all, there's people that know for a fact what the effects of this are, and they're doing it with the knowledge that it's going to impact the economy in the future.
Yeah, that's all part of the calculation, or people being scared. All right, so let's move on. Next topic. We still got a couple left.
Well, thank God, because we don't want to end on that note.
I know, that's so depressing. And it is depressing, but that the beautiful, uplifting part about it is Mr. Kennedy promises, like, that's something that he can do. Like, I can bring the troops home. I can end these wars, and I can bring the troops home, and I thank God for that.
I mean, if people will negotiate and recognize the alternative is these atrocities, you wish they would just go ahead and negotiate.
Yeah, well, everybody wanted to negotiate a little over a year ago when Ukraine still held more than what they do now inland. Okay, so the next thing up, what we've got is a little piece that came out about the fairness doctrine. There's this came out in midweek at some point. Saved it to the end, but it was a little discussion on something that used to exist about media, how they had to be fair. Mr. Kennedy says the news media made propaganda the business model under President Ronald Reagan when he abolished the fairness doctrine. Here's how it happened.
One of the problems with our democracies, and one of the problems was the repeal of the fairness doctrine. And I'd like you to explain what that is. And the reason I'm asking you is because that single act led to the propagation of information and media that no longer is about the truth. It's about polarization. And that was a very disturbing moment in American history that I don't think most people caught.
Congress passed it in 1928 at the dawn of commercial radio to make sure there was a diversity of voices. Fairness doctrine said you could only own a limited number of radio stations because they didn't want one corporate conglomerate to be able to control the narrative. It was recognized that the public owned the airwaves and that the broadcasters could be licensed to use them, but they could only use them to serve the public interest. And what that meant is, yes, they could make money by selling entertainment to you on the radio, but they had to tell the news that was important for forming government policies, at least for a certain amount of minutes or hours per day. And particularly when the television came along, they had to do it at a time when most families would be home. That's why we had the 6 o'clock news hour, because they thought all Americans are going to be home. The news divisions had to be independent. They had to be telling truth. If they told one side of the story, if there were two sides,
This one is a video, and I don't know why it's not playing.
Oh, was it not playing?
I wasn't seeing a picture.
Oh, did you hear the volume? Yeah,
I was seeing the sound, but not any video.
Okay.
And there is video with it.
I think my computer kind of slowed down a little bit. I don't know if it was a cloud issue or if it was if it's me, but my video kind of froze up there for a minute. And I suspect it's a little bit with the cloud.
Yeah,
But
because your video chat is froze as well. So
yeah, well, I'll let you guys carry on with the conversation while my computer tries to catch up here.
Oh, okay. So this is about the idea that under Reagan, he changed the laws, and I think Obama did a change also in there that
yeah,
it's okay to propagandize the American public.
yeah. Was that
And
in 2016? I believe was the
yeah.
year. Yeah, that
And so
Obama.
he's saying, back, the older you are, the more you're going to remember this. But back in the 1960s, whenever they had one presidential candidate talk, they would let the other side talk. Whenever they had even the convention televised, they would give a big block of time for the other side to say things, in a conversation like what we're doing here, to discuss what's going on, and that everything had to be balanced. They had to have multiple sources, and there was huge fines and horrible things that happened to any station that was not fair. Go ahead, Johnny.
Do you mean like how they do with the when the president gives a State of the Union and then the other party gives their response address? Okay.
Right. They did that for everything. And they had to always, even in news coverage, if it was a controversial issue, you had to show both sides of the issue. And this is what he's covering in this. And that's been chipped away with it. And since he mentioned Reagan, I was waiting to watch it with you guys here, so I didn't watch the whole thing. But, he talks about there was one place it chipped away under Reagan and they started in on changing the communications. There were big changes that happened at the end of the 90s while they were telecom bills that were preparing for what happens when the internet comes out and what happens to telecom and the regulations of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and how all those things work. So they've had 3 different times that they've made massive changes. And at the end of all this, now, and 2016, you notice how everything went to pundits and man in the street interviews, and of course, what did they just say on Twitter, rather than actually any investigative journalism? They just read press releases, and all the channels. You've seen the videos of all the channels, like 20 of them on the screen, and everybody's saying the exact same script.
Yeah, yeah. I saw a piece that was done about Kennedy with that. It was done by that news corporation Alex Jones used to own.
InfoWars.
Yeah, InfoWars. They did a piece where they put together the state news from like every state in the country, like it was ABC News or something like that, and the local 6 o'clock state news. They had a piece about Kennedy where they had it montaged, all 50 states, all of them saying the same exact thing from a teleprompter about him being an anti, this and anti
whatever.
that. I know. Yeah, because we're streaming on YouTube. I want to be careful about what I say here.
But when you look at this, that is why we have to keep repeating things. People respond to things. You have to hear it a minimum of 3 times and sometimes up to 14 to 17 before you start accepting it as true, no matter what it is. That's why they run advertisements so many times to try to make you watch them again and again. And they started doing this after the late 90s when they changed the rules there, that they started really upping all that. My 98-year-old mother was saying, I was watching some commercials, I try to avoid them, but you see like one set of pictures going, and then the soundtrack, they're saying something totally different. And then there's some music that doesn't relate to either one. Do you think they do that on purpose? And I said, yes. And, gave her the example of when you're watching a drug ad, you have.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what it reminds me of.
Grandma and grandpa happily at the picnic with their grandchildren. And then the voiceover is, and you will die a terrible death. And then the music is, reminiscent of something from your childhood. And, these are very carefully constructed, and a certain number of people mute. So what happens if there's no sound? And the science of that, and that has now no longer considered propagandize the people. So that is what's happening. And most people, the fact that, I've been talking to my mother about this, and, my father was in advertising and I was aware of it because he'd get upset about some of the tactics that we're using and carry on to us about it. So I was sensitized to it, but, people are just starting to awaken to just how strategic all this stuff is and how targeted. And when you have think tanks and money to pay think tanks to come up with, well, how can we get this message? That's why you don't let the reporters say their own version of the message in their own words. That does not have this propaganda value to it.
There's a large movement of musical artists out there right now too that's kind of pushing the narrative against the government and against the big corporations and things like that, and they're getting millions of views, like, and making the charts too. Like we all know Oliver Anthony and his story and all that, right? And there's other people like Dax and Tom McDonald and these other artists that are very popular that go around and they're basically preaching common sense, which is the Kennedy approach, in my opinion. That should be one of his campaign slogans: common sense.
I love that. That's also part of our page on Facebook. So anybody watching who feels pulled toward supporting us there, that would be awesome. And anybody here that for creatives, artists, designers, and writers, I'd love anybody to join and give artists and creatives a space on the page to be able to share their content, because art is a beautiful way of getting a message across. Be it a comedian, a writer. How many books have come out about all kinds of things that are happening right now? Songs like "Try That in a Little Town."
Yeah.
It was so funny. I mentioned that to a friend in Switzerland, and he said, I don't understand what I don't understand. And it's so funny. You have to be in America understanding what's going on here to understand why that song is so controversial. He's like, I don't get it. He was literally couldn't get it. It's so funny. Very, very amusing.
Yeah, we've come at that. Just one more thing, and I'll let you go, Mark. On our Discord, where Sophia is keeping the nice, we're not going to get thrown off of Facebook approach that's conducive to having new people come through. We're a little more the Wild West over on Discord. But one of the things that, and Discord is not hard to get on. I'm in the age group of, you can never get these people onto this new tech because it's a gamer platform. And, I was on it a couple of years ago because that was where you're connecting with people who are thinking. But one of the things we have are a lot of clip art and, backgrounds and, different things people are creating. And that you can build on each other's work. So people have readily available pieces that they can put together to illustrate whatever it is they're doing as well. And because the creative work, the things that we're getting, at the end of my video montage, we had Vlad there doing his pull-ups. He's like our pull-up star. But he started putting Kennedy branding on it, which it takes a totally different flavor. And we have a bunch of people who are like participating in this fitness challenge and trying to make themselves as good as they can be to be ready for this. But just having those little clip arts on there make a huge difference. I heard that there's somebody in Michigan who's made stickers that they're putting around of Kennedy. They're removable, so they're not doing any permanent damage. But there are so many things you can do that are little but fun.
In addition to joining discord.gg/Team Kennedy. And go ahead, John.
I just wanted to say before we end, I wanted to plug my event real quick again, just one last time.
Yeah, and I want to plug mine too. We got weekend of service going on, 9/11 weekend of service. I'm going to jump in before you. I've got a trash pickup like in 27 minutes. So that's why I'm eager to get off here so I can get over and start organizing my group. What do you got going on, John?
Okay, so on Monday, September the 11th, from noon to 3:30 Eastern Standard Time here in Indianapolis, Indiana, we'll be having an event gathering at the Landmark for Peace. It'll be where Robert Kennedy spoke the night Martin Luther King was assassinated, while Bobby Kennedy was campaigning in Indianapolis, Indiana. We'll be placing 102 small flags at the base of the memorial for the 102 minutes of tragic that happened during the day of 9/11. Bring your own lunch. And also we'll probably be ordering some food and stuff like that. That's going to be at, if you write down, 1702 North Broadway Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46202. And I'll see you guys there.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Carly and guests and Sophia for joining us today. And we'll see you guys, everyone, next Saturday.
See you, Mark.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
All right.
I'd love to ask this question. What was the first concert you ever went to?
The Beatles. The Beatles, yeah.
Where?
Shea Stadium.
And you probably know Paul McCartney now, right?
Yeah, and I knew John. He used to come to our... And I remember one night when he and Teddy...
Now I'm really interested in what you have to say.
And Rosie Greer played a trio all night with Teddy on the piano, on playing a guitar, and a high school classmate of mine playing harmonica, and then Rosie Greer on this big African drum. And they literally sang probably till 4 in the morning.
A couple of articles have come out recently calling me a populist candidate. And I was thinking, that's right, I am populist. I'm proud to be a populist because there's no way to take this country back except through people power. We have to unite working people in this country because the elites and corporations are not going to change on their own. They're not going to change without a powerful demand. And that's why I'm running for president. I want to reclaim our country from this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that is strip mining the middle class of its wealth, of its equity, and of our democracy. But we all need to recognize that if I do succeed, it won't be because of me. It will be because of you. It's going to be from people power, not Kennedy power. Thank you all for your commitment and your support and your friendship. Please donate to my campaign. This is our moment in history.
We support RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign simply because it's built off of truth and honesty. Mr. Kennedy's policies on economics, civil liberties, and revitalization will ensure America is on a proper path. Mr. Kennedy is not only my friend, he's America's friend. Let's heal the divide, get out, and vote. Kennedy 24!
If I have not significantly dropped the level of chronic disease in our children by the end of my first term, I do not want you to re-elect me.
Speak to the people of America about a subject which I believe to be most important, and that is the subject of physical fitness. And I speak not only as President of the United States, but also as a parent of 2 children who I hope will grow up with those qualities of vigor and energy which we identify with the best of America. This should be a matter of concern to us all. A country is as strong really as its citizens. And I think that mental and physical health, mental and physical vigor go hand in hand.
Mr. Crash of the world. The pines, they often whisper. They whisper, but no tongue can tell. Who drinks from the deep water? May he know the depths of the well. Shaken amid Mr. Crash of the world. May I stand unshaken amid Mr. Crash of the world. Oh, traveler, what have you seen? Where the crossroads, where you been, where you been? I once was standing tall, now I feel my back unshaken. Amidst the crash of the world, may I stand unshaken. Amidst the crash of the
I know that that's not because it's personally troubling to you, but your concern is that it will be misinterpreted if you talk about where this may have come from. But I think actually it probably makes sense just to clear the air. So what is the wobble in your voice?
Well, I really don't know where it comes from. I know that I got it. I had a very, very strong voice until 1996. When I was 42 years old, my voice got this tremor in it. And the disease is called spasmodic dystonia. And I had no inkling. For many, many years, doctors have said to me, did you have some trauma at the time? That because apparently the onset of this disease, which affects, I don't know how many people, but there's a significant number, maybe 50 or 60,000 people who are affected in this country. But the onset of the disease is often accompanied by trauma. 2 years ago, I was reading, I was preparing a racketeering lawsuit against a bunch of vaccine companies, against 4 vaccine companies that make all 72 of the mandatory childhood vaccines that are given to children in this country. And for the first time, I had to go through the manufacturer's insert of every one of those vaccines. When I got to the flu vaccine, I realized for the first time there's 420 side effects listed as vaccine side effects on those inserts. And I had never read them all the way through. When I was doing the flu vaccine section, I saw that many of the flu vaccines listed spasmodic dystonia as one of the side effects, the known side effects. And they have to get FDA approval to put that side effect on their manufacturer's insert. And FDA under federal law has to agree that there's a probability based upon the evidence that that injury is caused by the vaccine. So this was only 2 years ago, and I've been working on vaccine issues since 2005, and people would ask me, do you have any vaccine injuries in your family or among people who are close to you? And I would say no. For the first time, I recognized that there's a possibility that my injury, the reason it's a possibility is because at that point in my life, I was teaching at Pace University Law School in White Plains, New York. And right next to my clinic where I taught, it was the school infirmary. And the infirmary every year would post a sign saying, come get your flu shot. And every year I went in and got my flu shot. Oh, in 1996, I got a flu shot, and I have no idea whether that flu shot caused this condition, but it is now at least a hypothesis.
I immigrated to this country, and one of the things that really embodies America